Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you, as always, from the Extreme Studios in the Pinos Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have the young 20-something Professor Pixel, also from Central Florida here. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be covering on Extreme TV here our continuation of our Season 1 episodes of TV shows that we pick out and view first watch for both of us, which is the Canadian vampire early 90s show called Forever Night. We're on Season 1, Episode 5, Dancing by the Light of the Moon. An ordinarily long Professor Pixel title about a kinky stripper that has all these death fantasies that gets the main guys involved in it. So a little bit of a weird episode, but it definitely has a bit of a darker tone towards the end. I was thinking this would end up kind of silly, and it's not, especially after a couple light episodes. What's your initial take?
This one is interesting. That's what I'll go with. I was wondering if the thread itself was going to be supernatural, but no, it's somebody who just likes to get their rocks off at
I was thinking that too, that the lady in question here, the seductive socialite stripper, would be supernatural, and you're right, it's not the case, which kind of, I think, felt a little flat, especially with what they did with the AB historical backstory there of how he was getting turned and how that parallels what's going on in the current world. We see that a lot in current television shows and all that. Why don't you get us going into the first setup here, and let's get going.
So a man walks into a warehouse with a briefcase, and he's been stealing something. There's a woman there, and we don't get to see her face clearly. We just get to see flashes of her body and her lips. They're very close on those lips, so that way you can see every word. And she wants to know how it feels. How does it feel to be a thief? How does it feel to steal? Felt good, didn't it? And once her lover goes ahead and admits it, another man appears, takes piano wire, and just kind of chokes him out.
How did you know it was piano wire, sir?
Huh?
How did you know it was piano wire?
That's just normally what it is.
I know. It's as the French would like to say, a garrote. And I gotta tell you, when I saw this opening scene, I thought, okay, this guy's he's bait. Obviously, she's got him as a simp doing something, which it is. He's brought the package. We don't know what it is. Maybe it's something special. But then a nearly identical white guy of the same body and shape pops up behind him, like, what is this? A three-way thing? What the hell is going on here? And no, she's doing it, and they're like, okay, what kind of hold does she have on it? And they keep focus on her mouth. So you go, is she supernatural? Is she somebody from Nick Knight's past? So what I did like here too is right before we get the opening credits too, as I've said before, as a Canadian show, they were a little looser, maybe with some things, even though they weren't show skin. You get a little tease going up the thigh side there of her leggings and everything too. I like the subtle, like PG erotic kind of nature that some of these episodes seem to have. And my understanding too with Forever Night is that after this first season, seasons 2 and 3 actually get a little bit darker. So hopefully they get a bit more erotic, because you can't talk about vampires, especially sensitive ones like Nick Knight, and not have a little bit of eroticism, in which this show is, because it's about strippers. So we get the opening quick bit to it, which I don't want to pop too hard over. It distracts me and all that. And we actually get a very, I think, interesting scene here at the boss's headquarters, the HQ, as it were. Tell me what you think's going on here.
We learned that a cop has died, the one that was stabbed, and the police department is very upset because this man has killed another man. The fibers show up in his fingertips because he strangled the guy. We saw it. And they do not understand. They're very upset, trying to figure out what happened. And Nick Knight, of course, is on the case. He thinks it's simply just, he's dead, Jim.
Yeah.
That's it. He just turned. But he went ahead. They quickly are able to go ahead and get a lead.
What is the lead, sir?
A strip club. A lipstick, actually.
Yes, this is important.
Yes. There is
I loved
a very
it, actually.
particular lipstick that both men had on their bodies at the time of their death. And that's their main driving force, how they're going to go ahead and find whoever this woman is. Then following is their next lead, a strip club. What is it called? Jeannie's.
Hot Willie. I don't remember, something like that. It's not the Raven. This is the strip club.
Jillies. That's what it is.
You know, one thing I've been saying a bit about the Schanke thing, because I told you I felt like his character has the most that will change as far as adapting. I think he really fits in this episode. I'm being very serious about that here too, because he shows he's got a little bit of spine. He's definitely defining his own character, and as an actor, where he just seems like an average Joe kind of guy, he's not bad. And the captain, Stone Tree, which he's like the 6'6" guy in your office that you just call big boy or tall or something like that. The name fits the profile. Stone Tree. I'm like, the guy that I hate because it reminds me of a guy that saw Kolchak too many times and can't act. He was really, really close buddies with the cop that died, who, of course, is one of the guys at the beginning, the one that got whacked. So this time it's personal, right? So even though he's dead, Jim, what I thought was interesting was the whole lipstick perfume kind of thing. I thought, okay, he's a vampire. We've seen him, or we've seen what represents him flying, because we haven't actually seen a flying. It's such a cheap show. He has the power of suggestion, it looks like. He obviously lives a long time, and the sun will kill him. So I'm going, oh, will this have something to do with the fact that he knows he could like go into a strip club and smell all the women there and go, okay, it's that one because I could smell the perfume? There was some hint to me of this historic foundation of what could be in his past life with this perfume, because as we find a little bit later in the episode, there's only two places it's made. One is like in LA, the other one is like Bangkok or something like that. And like, and I thought maybe we'd get a flashback with it, because the B story of them in historic times is basically him in his pirate shirt, sitting down like at a bar or club somewhere where they're dining in the Middle Ages, and the chick's getting all hot for him. So that'll become more pertinent and interesting as it goes on, because, hey, let's be honest, the charcuterie board in the old places are fine, but they usually never had meat. They just had cheese and bread. So that was very campy. But the one thing that's been inconsistent is it makes it seem like him and the medical examiner, they're supposed to be like an item, but they're not. I mean, her name's Natalie, right? So Natalie's helping him out. She gets a little jelly in the episode, but he's acting like he doesn't give two shits about her. This is almost like Bond Money Penny, but minus the flirting, which I thought was different.
With that scene in particular, because the lead that Schanke goes ahead and gets about the strip club, he gets from some woman, whatever her name is, Tracy, something like that. And he says, all right, well, thank you, honey. And she goes ahead and gives him an earful over the phone. And he's like, okay, geez, all right, thank you, bye. Hangs it up. You can't call anybody honey anymore. He's like, and Nick's saying, yep. And then he goes ahead and kisses the corner on the cheek, says, goodbye, honey. And that felt a little playful to me.
Yeah, that's true. He was. Well, the thing is you realize he's been around 800 years, a lot of men and women, so he understands human nature, which is going to come up later in the episode because it's a big deal for me towards the end. What I really liked about this is they were not afraid to spend a certain amount of time here in the strip club, and basically goes in there and strong arms the guy that's the owner, basically saying, hey, I'm looking for whatever and everything too. But then we see Schanke. There's a really nice scene because there's live music playing, or at least whatever, and a good dance thing. It's good atmosphere. They generated it well here with a very small set. They got the one girl doing the walking like a panther kind of thing going on the stage, and Schanke being shot all in one scene. And of course, that's the one we recognize from the beginning. So she's very seductive. But also the thing that's kind of neat here too with Nick and Schanke is that they're walking around, they're talking about how they have different viewpoints about things. Because Schanke is probably considered a bit of a dope, but he's very firm in his moral ground with some of the things that he talks about here. He's not ashamed about ogling women, even though he's married and all that too. And that allows us to kind of recognize when he makes comments to Nick or whatever, Nick can get that lost 800-year look on his eye, make some comment when he's referencing the past, so they can transition to it, because that happens in here too. But I liked it. I'm like, you know what? Most of this show is being shot late at night because it was supposed to represent the third shift and all that. So there's something hypnotic about it where, to me, it's an atmospheric show, not quite at the level of Miami Vice that just sucks you, makes you feel like you're in there, where you can feel the heat and the humidity. But this blonde that's dancing and doing the eye contact, there's no nudity in here and all that. This is done well. But what I thought was going on was when they kept flashing to the back, I'm like, because it's such a crappy quality on YouTube that you can see here in the United States for free, and it's the only place you can do it. There's no HD version I can come across. I was like, wait a minute, that's not her, or is it? This is kind of a classier strip joint in that regard. You'd have to go to VIP for any nudity or backstage action, or of course this is on TV. I thought that, okay, he's been screwed by some woman in the past. Maybe this is like a reincarnation of that person, especially with the perfume and only 2 places make it. That's where I thought this was leading. I was wrong.
Oh, me too. There's 2 things. Because of the crappy quality, I'm watching on this fantastic 50-something inch OLED TV, and I'm getting this crappy video quality. I thought it was maybe the same woman and just different hair.
Right.
Maybe they just changed her hair. Second, you say there's no nudity. That's not true. There's no nudity that we can see, because we do see people walking around that are topless from the back, which isn't a detail that's usually included in these detective shows, which I appreciated.
I do too, because there's a nice little timing, because it's actually on the clip on the opening page where he lifts up his identity and it bears out the woman turning around, where you would see her front side. That's kind of cutesy, but I like it. It's like, haha, we know you want to see this, but we're going to tease you a little bit. I don't mind that.
No, I don't mind it at all. But yes, I thought exactly the same thing you thought, because he's having these memories go ahead and flood him at the time of being seduced. And I understood their point later on why they went ahead and showed that, because this woman is very seductive. Yeah, no, she's very attractive, and she knows she's attractive, and so she's able to wrap weak men around her little finger.
It's Jeanette that he saw in the past. The lady that we've seen before. She's the one appears to be the owner of the Raven, which is where he goes to for information. That's a street level contact stuff. He goes there, and we've at least seen one vampire that's in there. 2 they made a comment about his bad breath in an earlier episode. So we assume that he turned her with LaCroix, as I like to call him. Although I think they pronounced it differently at the end of the episode. So it is her. So I was like, but here's the thing. They're talking, while she's getting dressed, and of course they see the silhouette. This is classic 80s stuff where you can see her outline, but you don't really get to see anything. She's like, "Oh, will you toss me my camisole, please?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so they're flirting a little bit back and forth, not too heavy, but enough that's there. And he uses this voice talking with her. And then Schanke comes in, and they go to leave, and they got a little bit of a lead they're going to check out. And the thing is who's playing who here? It's a cat and mouse kind of game. So I was wondering, did she have some supernatural things that, like as a vampire, made men do it? And if so, why he would not see it? Because I'm not going to say it disturbed me, but it didn't make sense where he basically, this is where we get reminded he's a vampire, because he actually goes back to her place. He basically stalks her, literally, the next night. Just ends up in her 17th floor, top level pseudo penthouse, and she talks about how she was not a social worker, but a lawyer type thingy and all that. And I'm like, okay, you're a stripper. How are you doing this? What's going on? And he's just there. And she has no problem with him just literally appearing out on his patio. She's like, I was wondering when you'd get here. And then they do that really, really bad kissing makeout kind of thing. I mean, which is funny to watch and cool. But I'm like, wait a minute. It's got to be she's got a hook on him that Schanke would be immune to. You know what I'm saying, right? Supernatural or something like that. Maybe she's a succubus or something. I thought this was lore. I thought this was fan, because otherwise she's a decent-looking blonde. Other than that's
all she is. She's just a decent-looking blonde. And we understand later that why Nick does this, why he goes ahead and gets in, because it's to fake us out. That's really the whole thing. He's going to take this and he's going to go bad, because one of the people they'd go ahead and discuss earlier, people have their vices, their thing that goes ahead and can control them if they're not careful. And women is one of those items that go ahead and not that women are items, but they're one of those things in life that can go ahead and control you. And so we get him up there. He went ahead, he flew up there in that poor way that his feet go whoo.
Yep.
And he's standing up there, and I thought this was going to be the big reveal too. They're going to say, I was wondering when you'd get here. And okay, yeah, it's the same woman. It's gotta be, right? Nope. It's just that she's hot and she gets her rocks off at dangerous situations. So she convinces Nick, you need to steal something for me. You need to steal whoever the cops that died, whatever his name was,
his notebook.
Facebook. You got to
Yep.
steal it for me. Oh, it didn't tell me how you feel. And so we get this entire next day where he goes ahead to the police chief and he's acting like a real asshole to Schanke.
He was. I was like,
oh,
Schanke, punch him. I'll pop for that.
Let me go ahead and he had a casebook. Let me take a look at it. And he goes ahead. Of course, the police chief's like, yeah, here's the key. It's right underneath the drawer that has a trophy on top of it with an accordion. Did you say accordion? Yes.
Very big in the Polish and Eastern European households too, and certain things. So that's not surprising. As goofy as it may sound now, but back then, absolutely.
But that's why there's a joke about it in the episode. Did you say accordion?
Yeah, I know.
But he goes ahead. He's able to just get it, and he takes it back to her, and she's
like a bitch.
Yeah, she just throws it in the fire. She's like, I didn't need that. I just wanted you to do it. Makes out with him and tries to convince him to kill Schanke. That's the next piece. He goes back and acts like a real asshole to the coroner, kind of too. And then Schanke, like, I get, are you method acting, my friend? Is that it? Why are you doing this in the police station? You're not really possessed by this woman. You're not entranced by her beauty. Why are you doing this? You just chose to be an asshole. But they bring Schanke in, and he fake chokes him. But she had a backup ready at the door. So I was going to make a joke when this started about what if she had another person to kill the next guy and the next guy.
Well, yeah, you knew that was going to happen.
But no, she has him go ahead and kill Schanke, and then she had her other boy toy in the back ready to kill him. And because he's a vampire, he doesn't get shot. It doesn't matter though. And Schanke goes ahead and gets up. Are you all right? Oh yeah, no, I'm fine. So let's go. And they chase her and they get her up to the rooftop, and it's just her and Nick because he goes after the guy. And she's like, oh, I wonder what it's going to feel like to die, and leaps off the roof. And she gets to the ground. He gets there. Oh, it feels so good. I mean, at least she had a good time going, I guess.
Yeah, the ending I was not prepared for. Because there's I'm starting to get the gist of what every episode's going to be now. Like, right, so it's if he's usually wearing a trench early. And Schanke's always wearing his peacoat type-ish outfit, right? His Sam Spade-ish overcoat. Schanke was not being a goof at all this episode. So I like how he walks around like he's the fucking man, and he uses this voice with whatever ladies he's having to talk to, and he has no problem, treating them a certain way so he get the information. And that's kind of cool. He knows how to change his approach, depending on who he's dealing with. And so that's cool. So he's like real macho type A dude. Then we find out the particular about the episode. Then we get the flashback, and then he starts becoming sensitive, right? Because he can't be a professional. 800 years of not necessarily solving crimes, but staying alive as a vampire has its challenges, and you're choosing to have this as your front because you feel guilty, and yet somehow you just can't keep it on the pro tip like Schanke would tell you how to do. You let your personal shit involve yourself in going because you want to have some moral story to hear because you don't want to kill or anything. I mean, it's like, then he'll put on his turtleneck and wear his black leather jacket on top of it, which I don't mind, and he'll stop shaving. That's how all these episodes go. It's like, are you turning into a fucking bum as every episode goes on? Are you going to feed at the end of each one? We haven't really seen that. But, when he's flirting with her, I'm like, okay, that's good. He's strong, Nick Knight, or whatever like that. He even takes her lipstick while she's behind the screen or whatever, and he puts it on his fingertips so he can use that as a sample for later. I'm like, that's fucking cool. Lets us know he's not totally bitching out. But then there's a good bit of acting he has with Schanke where after being a dick to Schanke, he's like, hey, Schanke, I'm sorry, partner. I haven't been right with you lately. I owe an apology. Oh, by the way, what's going on? Or like that. And I'm like, oh, that's a really good bit of acting and all that. And Shanky's like, you know what? Loyalty, that matters. It's okay. Not a problem, partner. Whatever. Like, hey, Schanke, you're gaining a couple points in my book here too. And Stone Tree, even though he's been an ass, seems to be a little bit better in this episode because, we're seeing a different side of him too. But to your point here, the ending, the last 5-10 minutes is what this episode is about. It's not the really cool stripper scene where he's interrogating everybody and meeting her for the first time. That was dope. But here you get to this setup, as it were, and I'm like, okay, he's got the mic on, right? Where she's like, oh, damn it, basically you got me or whatever. And I thought, okay, whatever she's going to be, it's going to come out now. And they're doing this really forceful kissing where there's no tongue or whatever, but you're smashing it like you're, I don't know, Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber or something like that. And her hair's real poofed out in the, the 80s style and stuff. But after the so-called shooting of him and Schanke and all that stuff, you're like, what the hell's going on? And I got to admit, big fan of TJ Hooker, William Shatner and all that. I'm not saying that was a very expensive show to produce, except for maybe salaries. This one seems like a very BC level one. But this is perhaps one of the worst foot chases in all of TV detective history, because they're literally like walking maybe 1.5 speed or something, and it seems like it's sped up. And you get the Nick Knight thing looking around to the point where he just appears at the top. And then, Schanke with the other guy, I'm like, okay, at least Shanky's getting a little action. But this whole thing, I'm like, okay, what's the big reveal? And it turns out nothing more than she gets off. She has kinky death fantasy sex stuff. That's it. She gets sexually aroused by that. Now, I don't have a problem with kink. I don't have a problem with S&M. Maybe we could have been clued out to it if this was a S&M alternative type bar, or maybe the episode was him going to all the different ones and they were getting seedier and weirder depending on what taste they cater to. And I'm keeping that PG rated and all that. But you're absolutely right. I always want to know what death felt like. And she falls, and it was a good fall. I admit it. It was a good stunt.
It was a good fall, and that thud.
And she lands there. Nothing's out of place or like that. She's just laying there and like, oh, it feels great. I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. This is so stupid. It was beyond camp. It was beyond camp. And then they have, of course, the 1 minute a post scene where they're basically just around talking about things, and pseudo bonding with the fake ha 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 kind of talks with him and Schanke and Stone Tree and all that, looking at each other. And Nick Knight's gone on to his worst fucking outfit I've ever seen too. So I don't know what's going on here, but we see him bitch out at the end because we see on the really old PC with the old CRT screen, that means cathode ray tubes for you younger people. I mean, it's big, fat, and heavy rather than a flat one. Oh my God, they weren't always digital? No, they weren't. We see a slow zoom in of a singular rose and a very nice looking old school style bottle of this perfume laid out on top of the keyboard for, was it not Jeanette, but Cameron, whatever the hell her name is, the DA that he's been blowing off here. And then we get a transition, and this is what makes the episode. We get to a bunch of lit candles because, I will say this, there's lots of lit candles in the show. Not as much smoke machines as I would like. Certainly not on Dark Shadows level, because it's not a Dan Curse production. But you've got basically Nick going back to his old days with Jeanette. And Jeanette's pretty hot in here, seduced him, just playing him like a bitch. She's got a little bit of the longer hair, kind of whatever. And it seems like they've been making sweet, sweet love. And then as he's basically dropped the load in her, she makes a comment about being together. So apparently this is the act where he's been turned by Jeanette. She says his name is LaCroix, which I always think LaCroix, like the bad drink. And he's like, we're going to be friends for a long, long time. And then we get the bit at the end.
And he goes ahead and he turns him, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the end of the episode. It's like, okay, we haven't seen him in a while because he was on the radio, right? That we talked about. We're like, that's cool. So he's not going to dominate every episode, but
I understand what they're going for. It's good. That is a good scene, but this whole thing about it being just, how passion drives us to the darkest selves. That's like, come on, man. You have a show that's featuring a vampire that's over 800 years old as a detective. You can't throw one supernatural baddie for us to face. Like, a succubus would have been great. I thought she was feeding off of killing these men. That would have been so much better.
I was going for the old conspiracy theory here in the United States of like when people get scared, their adrenochrome pumps out, so they got to catch them in the act, something stupid. I mean, I'm not going to go deep dark and all that, but I thought, wait a minute, what would like an old supernatural spirit want? Like, take your seed out of you while she's on top of you, then you die or something. I mean, and that's how she stays alive. That would be cool. That'd be very Kolchak-ish or other type of stuff. It would have fleshed out a bit more of if there are other supernatural elements, which you have to think there is, right? Because we don't know there's not. And we don't know that he turns into a bat. We just know he flies. So I don't have a problem that did happen. And I I do like the fact that this episode is one like many others, and this time they used a woman, which is good. They usually talk about something about man's human nature and how it really doesn't change over time. And so they use his backstory to illustrate something he's had an experience with that imprinted on him at a juvenile stage in his development over 800 years. Because again, 800 years, you got the same brain. You can only hold so many memories. Certain things will trigger things and get flashbacks. And so I do like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was good that they didn't do it because, again, the big conversation him and Schanke have, where they're getting to know each other. And this was good character development. Was basically, what drives men? Is it money? Is it sex? Is it women? Power, basically, because sex really isn't power. But I mean, you can cross over some of these things, and it's like, no, it's definitely women for me. And whatever. And I thought that wasn't bad. I'm like, okay, this isn't so bad. But again, I don't feel like they've nailed down the dynamic between Nick and Schanke yet, or even Stone Tree for that matter. And that's fine. It's only 5 episodes in. But I do appreciate the fact, like I say, the show's spent a lot of time at night. It's one of those shows where, like I say, it's very atmospheric. It's got its own beat to it. It moves briskly enough, but it feels, I think because of the music and the lighting and all that, it is almost kind of trancing away, a little bit hypnotic and atmospheric, where if you're under the influence of anything, or if you're not 100% watching it, it can lull you to sleep a little bit. Not that it's boring, but it just has a different tempo to it. It's almost like it's one of the first TV shows. There was an ASMR type of television show featuring Neat Night here in Forever Night. It's like one of those kind of things, right? Where it's just relaxing and soothing, because there's really not a lot of violence. There's a setup, and then there's a moral interjection, which ties to a case, and we get our flashback, and then we just execute. So I thought it was actually a pretty good episode. It was different than some of the other ones we saw before. It kind of stood out, I thought. Not in a bad way, but I think there's a lot of meat on the bone on this one.
I feel somewhat. I don't feel it's a bad episode. It's fine episode. That's what it is. It's fine compared to the other ones, though. For me, it just hasn't been hitting as hard. Like the other ones had like a definite we're done. Oh man, that was really great. But this, I was left unsatisfied. Unlike the woman dying at the end of this episode.
Yeah, I've said before when we talked about doing the show as a first watch for both of us, I've seen an episode here and there, but I couldn't recall which one or what season or anything like that. I just knew of and always liked the idea of it. But one of the things too, at the bigger scale here on Extreme Movie Show, when we talk about things, not just the movies, but with television, and we mentioned pop culture and stuff, is that you're a young 20-something guy. I'm an 80s teenager. Basically, that's when I grew up. So we have a generation between us. And what's cool about talking about stuff like this is it's a very 80ish kind of show going into the 90s, the way the feel of it is. And again, AIDS was a thing that had been going on since the 70s and 80s, in regards to your political affiliation or what you identify as, or any of those types of societal things. It was a big deal because it wasn't really approached a lot in television or movies a lot. And I think that this show, because of when Magic Johnson, I mentioned this before, I think last week, came out publicly, one of the best NBA professional basketball players of all time in the world, a billionaire that's alive to this day, big, huge brand ambassador for anything he does and touches and all that. He's known for an African-American businessman kind of mentality. For him to come out and say he has AIDS, that was a death sentence. So he had to retire. People did, and then he came out of retirement like a year later, tried to play. He was taking steroids and he was doing AZT and all sorts of drugs and all that. Put on a lot of weight because he's a tall, very tall, skinny guy, but he's very muscular. People didn't want to play with him. This was all brand new in the American public discourse when it comes to sports and society. I mean, he's that big of a kind of actor. I'm not going to, when I say actor, I mean on the big stage here in terms of pop culture. He transcended basketball. Not quite as big as Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan had to get his way into that. You could even argue that if it wasn't for him and what his story of going through AIDS and bringing it to the public consciousness, sports and the way people would view it be different. So when they decided to do this show Forever Night, they said, we're going to try to do it differently. And that's why I like to kind of joke and describe it as, well, it's the sensitive vampire, but not the mopey, morose, 150-pound soaking wet, pale white makeup masquerade ones where the female vampires have more meat on their bones in the 90s than the males do. This guy has got a conscience. We hadn't really seen that before. And so it is different. This is the kind of show that, like I say, still was like the template that it could be successful if you do it in a different light, if you tie it to something that is relevant topically. So it's a decent vessel for it. You can argue how much of it's a vampire show versus a morality show. I don't mind what they're trying to do with it. And it could very easily just be, yeah, I'm a vampire detective, let's go solve a case, and that's it, and have some baddies and stuff. But they do literally take the time out in every episode to talk about some moral question or issue. I was curious whether or not that's a big deal to you, or whether you like it, because we almost don't really see that at all in modern stuff, unless you believe that there's messaging going on, like with Disney and other things. Not to turn this into a woke conversation, but is that something you've noticed that's different than the current stuff that's out there?
I mean, I don't know about that, because that episode, to me, like, it went ahead and it went ahead and brought up, okay, well, AIDS.
Nick's saying he's a bit of a pussy hound. Him and Schanke both.
I'm so sorry. Did it cut out?
I was saying Nick and Schanke, they're basically telling us they're pussy hounds. They don't care about their job or power that way. They care about the ladies.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that part. Yeah, I mean they say that, but at the same time, he wasn't really under the influence. So in Schanke, he had that crisis of faith in that one episode with the female vampire, the Raven. But these two are good guys, honestly. Like they're influenced by women from time to time. They're influenced by a pretty face, sure, but most guys are. But not. They're at their core, they're good cops. They're good detectives. They're good people. Even with Schanke's comments sometimes.
What is it Nick says in the episode? What makes a good man evil? And he's saying it in that philosophical, faraway, 100-year-old voice. And Schanke doesn't really see that because he's really blind. He was bitching about how he only has red wine and Nick's thing because he had paid him a visit, right? It's like, as a matter of fact, I'll take you there right now. And Nick puts his leg up on the couch and he goes, I'm all out. And then he changes the subject. I'm like, little interchanges like that. Nick's really good, is acting a lot too, but it's, I don't know. I'm liking it. I'm vibing. It definitely has a feel to it. But the big problem I have with her isn't that she was dropping. You're like, wait a minute, you could have saved her, bro. You let her die.
I mean,
why?
Yeah.
I mean, not that he had to, but it's like you let an average 25, 30-year-old. Look, she's hot, but let's be honest. You've been in a strip club. She was mid. She didn't have any tats or anything like that, and it wasn't a different type of club that caters to different types of needs and all that. Very generic, kind of dressed up in lingerie type of thing, dancing strip club. This is harmless. You could take a young person to it and not warp them or anything like that, right? That would be a nice, easy one to go to if you don't know what's going on in strip clubs or those kind of environments, and you start to go to some, right? That would be a nice little way to ease yourself into it. So this is very harmless, nothing shocking here at all. You don't even see VIP rooms. You didn't see them snorting drugs or anything like that. So all that aside, it's like, how are you so weak in the head over a blonde? Now, she's not a ditzy blonde, but she got a really nice body, and she was very flirty, and she knew she was, which is very seductive, and you looked like you might have been playing her earlier. But how you got such a weak head, bro? I don't get it. It wasn't the reincarnation of somebody previously that I thought, okay, maybe he's having flashbacks and that woman had control of it and he couldn't help himself. Here, it was just he couldn't help himself to a mortal woman. I'm sorry, but that's the big issue I have with this episode. It's like, bro, come on, man.
Again, that was an act. That was all. Like, to me, at least, it seemed like he was acting, and he was just method acting the entire time because he wasn't actually under her influence. Like, he just waited to get Schanke involved. Like,
maybe, but he gets that despondent, like I say, emotional, he cares look on his face a lot. So it's like, okay.
Yeah.
No. Nothing wrong with the show parading around a bunch of naturally beautiful women and all that, even if they're weirdos like this one. Because stripper with kink death fantasies. That's what it is.
And we forgot to bring up, because you were asking, how did she even afford this place? Because she was apparently a corporate lawyer. And she
but it was too boring for her. Yeah.
She wanted to do this to go ahead and convince men to kill themselves, I guess. or kill
But
other men.
I go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's what I was saying. Just yeah.
It's disappointing. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I think the execution here kind of fails because of her dropping the end. Like I said, I wasn't prepared for it, so I kind of went like that, laughed. I'm like, wait a minute, she did kill herself. Wait a minute, he really didn't save her. Really, that's it.
That's
Okay,
it.
okay, we got something at the end to make up for it, but you know,
so good. What an episode.
You know, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and say I hope there's future episodes with even crazier, hotter women that are even more deadly that you can take more seriously, because the one takeaway from here is no matter what, as a guy, crazy going to get you. So don't do it. And so, you know, you could argue that was a part of the theme here too, which she was successful in her role. So I can't do it, but it's, yeah.
That's
All right,
how
final
the
thought.
episode leaves us. It was still fine. This is entertainment. It is. Like,
Right.
if you're enjoying any of the other episodes of Forever Night, you'll enjoy this. But it's not one of the best, no.
And I can't tell how awful it really is, and I'm just marking out for it, and if that's going to run out, because that does happen. I know people were big on Buffy. I know people were big on Angel and all the other stuff that would come up a little bit later. But I'm telling you, if it wasn't for the show and people talking about it, you know, I don't know if you would have those shows.
No, this is leagues better than that. This is like if Dark Shadows and Buffy had a baby. I wouldn't say Dark Shadows and Angel, but Angel was, it tried to be like it took itself too seriously, even with its goofy episodes to me.
But I like that. That's the problem. If you don't take yourself too seriously, you become a comedy. Right now, this is not a comedy show.
No, but I don't know how to go ahead and explain, because Buffy also didn't treat itself like a joke.
I think it did, though. We were just season 1 here on Extreme TV, and it was a lighthearted, fun romp through it.
Series. I finished the whole series of Buffy. Let me tell you, it does not stay that way. It eventually, it's able to drop things, and it has serious episodes. There's one episode called The Body, if you haven't heard of it, where her mother just dies naturally, and that whole episode is like, oh my god, and it is trying to be like, oh well, we're a serious show now. But Angel has that kind. It's entertaining.
Angel's is a spin-off show, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in a sentence or two, what's Angel's thing? He's there because
Angel is a private investigator who is still trying to find a way to become human. Like that's like his side thing.
So it's the same thing as Nick Knight.
Yes, but Nick Knight is more. I like Nick Knight more.
A little more serious.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's all I ever asked. A little bit of seriousness and stuff. So, yeah, it was okay. It was okay. I mean,
not every episode can be a winner. That's all I feel.
Yeah, that's true. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1, episode 5, Ever Night. Dancing by Light of the Moon. A cute title, but a bit too cute, bit too long. Crazy stripper and the death stuff or whatever. Yes, Nick actually gets turned. We see how that happens. We see LaCroix, a really bad soda guy, vampire show up. Although he doesn't seem lame yet. He's been good what few scenes he's been on there. I'll give him credit. We get, of course, the turtleneck leather combo and a few shankisms. I don't know what to call those things yet. And more brooding Nick Knight in scenes. I'm going to see if that arc of his that I tell you goes through. I'm going to start making some notes here. Starts off professional, then gets a flashback, then gets emotive, then stops shaving, and then starts that whole thing. We'll see how it is next week when we do episode 6 of Forever Night. Thank you for watching. Listen. Have a good night. As always, stay extreme. Good night now.
Or could you say good night now?
Good night. Good night.